Hello everyone, and welcome to The Man Behind the Curtain. I'm Randy Young, the guy in the red shoes, and I've been in the video production business my entire career, and it's taken me around the world a few times. But more importantly, I've had the opportunity to work with some of the most creative people in television, and boy do they have stories to tell about the business and the people who make it happen. We've always been told, ignore the man behind the curtain, but you can talk to me. All right, let's get started. I'm sitting here with one of my best friends in the business, Szabo. Hi, Clark.
Hey, Randy. How are you?
Clark is one of the best TDs in the business, and now he's going to tell you what that means.
Take in all the different feeds, make sure everything's working properly, signals look good, cameras are painted correctly, you're responsible for routing feeds, so, switching, routing, quality control.
Is there a difference between that and broadcast?
It would be in a studio or in a mobile production truck. If it's a remote situation, for a sporting event or a award show, something like that. The nice thing about a truck, it rolls in, it's got all the gear. Usually it works. So
sometimes it doesn't.
Sometimes it doesn't, but then, in recent years, a lot of times there's specialty gear that gets shipped in, to work properly.
Whatever is the hottest, newest thing.
Right, or, a different kind of graphics machine that maybe the truck doesn't carry.
Right.
In a studio, it's there. It's usually left on all the time. You walk in if you're doing a newscast. Mm-hmm. I did news with CBS for about 12 years, Fox for a couple of years.
We both know a little bit about our histories, but where did you start? Why did you start? What drove you?
Where I went to high school, they owned and operated a public television station. It was the first public television station in the state of Indiana. Went on the air in 1967. So it was part of the vocational programs at my high school. So I started when I was 16 and spent about 3.5 years, about 2 years as a student. And then I spent about another 1.5 years after as a full-time employee of that public television station before I went off and did other things.
At what point in time did you consider it a passion as opposed to a career or a job?
Almost instantly. The first live show I got to work on, it was kind of like a news format show. It was a sports show, sports wrap-up show after Friday night football games. Rush tapes back, bring them back, show highlights, at 11 o'clock. Early on, I got to shoot single camera, E&G style. And back in those days, the camera was quite heavy. Right. The tape recorder was quite heavy. The battery belt was quite heavy. And I weighed about 140 pounds. And I'm hauling, it must have been 80 pounds of gear.
Sure.
But taking that gear out and shooting single camera, telling a story, editing in your head, mm-hmm. I loved it, because you would go out and create your story and make it look like you had multiple cameras, even though you only had one.
Sure.
So I really enjoyed that. And unfortunately, after about 3.5 years of doing that, then I went into remotes and doing live sporting events, primarily in Chicago, mm-hmm. Chicago Bulls, Blackhawks, Michael Jordan's rookie game, first game, I was there.
Yeah.
I covered Michael Jordan from the beginning of his career to his first, when he first retirement into baseball, and then came back and continued and won 6 championships. So got to be a part of that.
That's the thrill.
For sure.
Well, so you mentioned technology a minute ago.
Yeah.
I think the changes in technology in my career alone have been stupendous.
absolutely.
You talk about cameras weighing 50, 60 pounds
Yeah,
in battery packs and all that, and now they're nothing.
right. So this is your camera now.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's
doing fancy pants 4K video,
right.
8K video. Who
Right.
knows what it's doing?
And
these
it didn't cost $150,000.
days. No, and the lens didn't cost $100,000.
Right.
Yeah, I remember when you didn't get a lens with a camera. You bought a body and
Right.
chose the lens.
Yes.
Tape used to be 2 inches wide. Now it's just these little microchips.
Yes. Yeah. No. Absolutely. But it's been. That's one of the things that keeps it fresh. Is as technology changes, you're always evolving, learning. Doesn't get old.
Well, I hope it doesn't get old. I
Yeah.
mean, we get old, but it
Yeah.
doesn't, perhaps.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's going?
Well, here we are. This is a podcast.
All right.
Years ago, you had a few channels, and the only way anyone was going to see it, you had to get on one of the broadcast channels.
Right.
So, here we are now. Things can be stored, in the web, and people can access your content anytime, anywhere. Where it goes from where we're at now, I can't say. Don't know. I don't know if anybody knows.
I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
And they keep changing the technology of delivery. That's the big changes.
Yeah.
Is how it's being delivered. A bit about how it's being recorded, but I think it's more a delivery issue in these days.
Yeah.
Like you say, everybody's got a podcast. Everybody's got 300 channels in their living room. We remember the days when there were 3 or 4 tops.
Correct. Yeah. I have to say though, I really enjoyed the early days of my career. Not that I don't enjoy it now, but I guess I was younger, and it was just so exciting.
Yeah.
Because it was all new.
Well, let's get back to the duties of a TD.
Yeah.
And the experiences that you've had. I mean, you've done some very successful shows, obviously. Worked some very successful sporting events.
Yes.
Corporate events with me.
Yeah.
Are there any that have gone awry? Funny stories about, or perhaps they're headed towards the brick wall, but you turned them on the tracks and got them online again?
Oh gosh. Sure. There's. Oh boy.
I mean, we've all got crazy stories.
Sure. I don't know where to start because there are so many.
Give me one from the Harpo days.
Harpo days. Okay, working on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Oprah would walk into the control room and she'd have someone with her. She'd walk in, in the morning and say, "Oh, hey everybody, it's Spike Lee." Oh, okay, hey Spike, it's here. It was Bill Cosby. Hey,
Right.
Oh, hey Bill,
Yeah, I remember Bill being there.
Yeah. But sure. I mean, I've done broadcasts where you lose power. And I was at Chicago Stadium doing a game, and bam, power out, down. It took a while to get it back, but we got it back. Got back on the air.
And you've worked with dozens and dozens of different directors.
Sure.
You and I have worked together, like I say, for 36 years.
Yep.
And we sort of have a language between us and an action sense that you know where I'm going, I know where you're going, I know what your challenges are.
Yep.
You certainly know what my challenges are or where I need to go.
Yep.
What are the best tools that you have to help out somebody like me sitting to your left or right?
Well, listen to what's going on. Keep an eye on what's going on. Just because you say, hey, take 2 or take 3 or whatever, well, I better take a look and make sure that the camera's framed properly, the camera's in focus. Right. I try to, catch those things before I put it on the air. Interpret what you say or what a director says. Sometimes what a director says isn't what they mean.
Really?
Yeah, that happens quite often.
Ready, 3, take 2?
Well, yeah. Yeah, it's just trying to
Is there
keep us on the right course.
any specific thing that you need to do, anything that you have to do to make it safe for you to sit there and know what's coming on, that you're confident in it?
If there's a piece of gear that's failed, and you're working to get something right, and if it's live, that can add some stress to a situation. But you'll find a workaround. If something fails, hopefully there's a backup. Usually when we do a production, we always have backup.
Sure.
Redundancy is built into any production. So.
What do you think the best path for somebody coming up in the business would be these days? Somebody just graduated college or just got out of a trade school or just got out of high school, and they come to you and say, hey, I like your job, this is pretty cool, how do I do that?
Well, years ago I would say get yourself a job in a small market television station, and typically you would get experience in doing almost every position in any in a production. Whether it's audio or playback. We used to call it tape because everything did playback on videotape, or film. When I started, we had film chains.
Sure.
So it's way back. They have a production tool in their hand with their phone, and most people are computer savvy these days. So recording content and editing. It's but how do you get started? That's
it's way different. I know it's different from when I started, different from when you started, which I think was later on than I started earlier than you did.
Yeah.
And I think we both got lucky and got into some pretty good positions to move our careers forward.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Do you think you have to have a relationship with the director next to you? Do you think you need to be best buddies, friends, cohorts, colleagues? Where's the line? What's the difference?
No, that helps for sure. I mean, you and I think the first thing I did with you was Standard Oil, or Amoco back in those days, their 100-year anniversary in 1989. That was the first thing we did together. And then we started working together on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And then at that same time, you were still, you were doing your corporate work, and we did a lot of shows for Toyota Motor Company. And I think I did maybe 7 or 8 of those with you
all over
through the 90s. So anyway, yes, because then I know what you want. You know that you can depend on me. When I was working for NBC Sports, I worked with one director for almost 25 years. I worked with other directors during that time, but like the last decade that I worked with them, covering NHL hockey and doing the Stanley Cup final for NBC, I had known that director for 25 years, you 36 years. So yeah, it definitely helps.
Did you ever feel like you had to break them in?
I mean, I've worked with so many over the years, it's like I can adapt to anybody's style. Except, I don't like it when people lose their cool.
It happens a lot. What's the worst situation where that came into play for you?
I was doing a Thursday night football game for the NFL Network, and the producer and director started getting into a shoving match in the truck while the game's going on.
Wow.
So I won't name names, but
I don't want you to name names, but
game's going on. I'm like, ready 2, take 2, ready 14, take 14. I'm carrying on with the show while those 2 guys are going at it. That was kind of crazy. I'm not telling that one.
Must be a good one. But you still have to keep your cool.
Yes.
And you have to keep your hands on the buttons.
Yeah.
Like you say, carry on with the game.
And I've been able to do that most of the time, but sometimes when demands are unreasonable, and that doesn't necessarily happen in these situations, but in some of my broadcast years, you got to be a bit much.
You've done a lot of corporate shows with me.
Yep.
Most of our work has been, almost all of our work has been either corporate or award shows.
Yeah.
And I think they're pretty civilized in nature for the most part.
Yeah.
And working with the right people, they're organized and ready to go. We don't face a lot of disasters, but we face a lot of long hours. Mm-hmm. We face some pretty interesting concepts and challenges. How do you feel about that business versus sports business?
Here in corporate, we have time to make things work right. And if there's an issue, you usually are able to have, if a piece of gear fails, you can have it shipped in or located maybe even in that city, especially like you're in Las Vegas or if you're in New York or, bigger city, you can get your hands on whatever you need.
Well, we talked about kids getting into the business. Would you encourage them to go the sports route and follow what they may think their passion is, or the corporate route, which is perhaps not as exposure and exciting,
right,
and breakneck pace, but certainly steady?
If you're a sports fan, go for it. There's so much of it now. I mean, when I started out, ESPN had just gone on the air. If you want to stay busy in corporate, there's plenty of work there too.
What I liked about it is that it's clean work. It's a week long as opposed to 2 or 3 days.
For
Maybe
sure.
It's 10 days long, but you're in nice cities, oftentimes resort cities.
Yes.
And I think you find a nicer personality of the general people who work in the business.
And there is something to be said to, all right, I'm going to travel out on a Friday. We're going to set up on Saturday and Sunday and rehearse on Monday and Tuesday, and we got shows on Wednesday, Thursday. That is nice because you are in one location for that week, where when I was doing, broadcast shows for the networks, oh my gosh, I might be on an airplane on Tuesday to fly to one city, do a show on Wednesday, fly home on Thursday, go home real quick, and then Friday hop on another plane to go do an NFL game, in another city on Sunday, and then fly home on Monday. So it was like boom, 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 boom. I was, a lot more travel, and then you're setting up again and making sure things work. So there's a little bit more hectic.
So I'm guessing overall you've had a satisfying career.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. As a kid, my favorite goalie for the Chicago Blackhawks was Tony Esposito.
Sure.
Well, he was still playing when I did my first Blackhawks game, but he was injured. And so I think the Montreal Canadiens were in town, and so they did an interview with Tony, first intermission. So I was a cameraman back then, so I got to meet my childhood idol. So that was one of the first things that was just so cool.
We all have stories about that we all, love, and we exchange those stories and tell those stories.
So I'm at the Chicago Stadium. I think it's 1986, and the Blackhawks are playing the St. Louis Blues. It's pre-skate. We're setting up, doing some recordings, and all of a sudden I hear someone. I'm like, who's knocking on the truck door? No one never knocks on the truck door. I go, come on in. And so door swings open, and I hear this voice. It's, here's your pizzas. I'm like, I recognize that voice. And I spin around and I look. It's Bobby Hull, the Golden Jet. And he's like, well, I was over at Jake's bar, having a few, and they asked me if I'd bring, the pizzas down to the boys. I said, sure, I would. I'm like, well, thanks, Bobby. I go, one of the greatest hockey players in his day, so he's delivering pizzas to us, in the truck. And I'm like, all right, thanks a lot, Bobby.
Did you tip him?
No. I asked him if he wanted some. He's like, no, I'm good. So anyway, fast forward the next year, and next season, Blues are in town. we're in the pre-skate, setting up, waiting for, puck drop, and all of a sudden, and I look back at Stu Green, my audio engineer, and I look at him, I go, no way. And I go, come on in. Door swings open. Hey guys, here's your pizzas. It's Bobby Holt again. So he didn't deliver pizzas to us once, but 2 times.
2 times.
So that's one of my all-time favorites. That one of the all-time hockey greats delivered pizza to us at the truck twice.
Great stories.
So, yeah, that's one of my favorites. So I'm sorry I had to sneak that one.
No, you got to get in.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of this, is to share these stories and these experiences. So, and on that, I just want to say thanks for being part of it. It's really been great. Good stories, good insights. I think there's some value in all of it.
Oh, for sure. Right? Thanks for having me.
Thank you.